Hey everybody, welcome to the episode of the GMG Indie Hour. It's episode 35, and we're doing some pirates today. Goodbye mechs, goodbye science fiction, goodbye grimdark, hashtag 28. Now we're going back to history, to Port Royal. This is a show where the GMG patrons pick games that they think deserve more attention in the indie sphere, small boutique games, or games that they think just deserve more attention. And this week's pick was Firelock Games, sort of answer to a historic, so like a Warhammer historical style, sort of Mordheim-y warband game, Port Royal, set in the high seas era of sabers and muskets in Port Royal, Jamaica, and is their lovely plastic ranges skirmish rule set with solo, co-op, head-to-head, full campaign rules, and a modern setting. So let's check it out real fast. If you haven't seen this before, this is a show that airs on YouTube, but there is additional content and a whole little hangout before and after that happens on GMG's Patreon. And all these games are nominated and picked by the patrons. This week, this was by far the top pick for the patrons, and it's because they love these like small count skirmish games. Now, Firelock is known for their naval combat games. They have Blood and Plunder, which is a high seas piracy game. Again, it uses like full ships and crews, and you can play on land, you can play on the water. And this was more of sort of a dialed-in skirmish game set in the sort of crumbling Carribean port city of Port Royal. 7 faction boxes are available. There is a two-player starter set too, and it's fully supported on their website. I think this crowdfunded last year, and so everything is done and ready to rock and roll for it. And you can see they've got a ton of Warband products and like a faction bundle too. But I figured the thing I'd highlight first is you can grab the rulebook and digital for $20, which is what I did today for the review. There's sprues of like weapons and like customizational stuff, but there's also a wonderful core box, which even comes with terrain. Under $100, strategically $99 USD, and you can see it's got the hardcover rulebook, it's got some cardstock terrain and a full punch set of tokens, and you get 2 warbands because it's like a 4 to 10 model game. So you're gonna get the whole like pirate box they've got. They got this pirate crew box, which is all customizable, a couple captain models, and this friar model as well. So yeah, $100, fits easily into the sort of Christmas table or Christmas morning test of you can just rip and play. You get additional accessories too, like some objective markers, all your D10s for playing the game, and even a little paper game mat to go with the terrain set that you get. So a pretty comprehensive box for just under $100, and the patrons decided that they wanted this to get more attention. So we are checking it out today and checking out the core rule set. Obviously, you've got lots of factions. Dutch Capers, Forces of the Crown, some Maroons, Caribbean Raiders, Spanish Guardas, French Buccaneers, Jamaican Pirates, and then Wild Beasts. You get some boars and crocodilas, so why not? Why not have that? And obviously these are the actual like crew kits and stuff are in hard plastic, so the same kind of GW styrene plastic. So if this is your first foray into the idea of doing like a non-Games Workshop or non-like sort of like big pop culture miniature game, you're going to feel pretty comfortable. They've got instruction sets in the boxes. Everything's pretty intuitive to put together. And you can use the same plastic glue, primers, paints, everything that you already have if you're coming this from the workshop world. So let's dive in and take a look at the rule books. You guys can kind of understand this game. It is a sort of like full color rulebook here. You can see Port Royal of Jamaica. For whatever reason, this PDF, this is the only bifold. So I can't, it just doesn't show up right for everything else. Everything else I've scaled the image to the page, but this one you're seeing like the middle of 2 folded pages. Get an idea of the size of the street here, though. It's not a huge city, and there's lots of things happening. Full credits, thank you very much for continuing this, everyone in the indie sphere. Of course, Mike Tunez is the lead designer and head honcho over there at Firelock. They've got a historical consultant, which I think is great. Wonderful photography, the game mat, model sculpting, model design, painting, everything here accredited. And our cover once again, miniature skirmish warband set in the Searover's Carribean. I love these like little skulls and crossbones. It's very like nautical tattoo style, all this art. I'm betting someone at Firelock Games has at least one of these images as a tattoo. If they don't, I very much misjudged them. So let's talk about the core mechanics. First things first, love this Jervis Johnson style project management, like writing style for games. They're very easy to follow. I've heard people criticize this in the past as being too sort of like clinical a writing style. It only is if your actual language in your writing becomes legalese. You can lay out a book like this and have your references be nice and easy, like chapters and then subchapters or subheadings. And it actually makes your workflow really easy. You can just start with your chapters of like all the big things that you want to write in, and then break it down into all the sections that you have to fill in as like a workflow thing. Like, this is a great way, and this is something I think Jervis has talked about before when he wrote Epic Armageddon, which is the 6 mil skirmish game from the Fnatic era of Games Workshop, where a really useful workflow thing for some people is you just write everything that needs to be written first as your chapter heads. Then you go to each chapter head and you break it down into all the steps that go into that chapter, and then you just spend like an hour or two every day filling in those section heads, and you can see what you got done. You don't get lost in the details. You don't overwrite a section, including things from a later section. And it also gives you the sections to refer to in advance in the future. So you can refer to something that say, this will be covered fully in section blah, blah, blah later on. So I know I'm harping on like a really minor thing, which is like section headers here, but it means typically the rules interlink really well. So if you see this on a table of contents page, you're going to feel pretty good. You're going to feel like your rules are probably going to make a lot of sense. And we get some background. So once the richest and wickedest city on earth, it now lies in ruins after devastating earthquakes and tsunamis, brought maybe God's divine justice on the place. Founded by one of the original strongholds and legendary Brethren of the Coast, massive raids were launched here by stalwart buccaneers such as the late Sir Henry Morgan. And after Morgan was appointed Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica, he turned to his fellow buccaneers and helped the government to turn Port Royal from a stronghold of pirates and privateers into a profitable plantation economy. For now, at least, the apocalyptic circumstances have turned that idea on its head. Former English pirates and buccaneers, or just privateers, have taken to wanton looting and raiding all about the island, but they are not alone in this. Other sea-roving sorts, including privateers of Spain, the Netherlands, and especially France, with whom England is currently at war, have taken advantage of the current situation and joined in the looting. Additionally, there are roving Caribbean warriors, the maroon communities of the island's interior, and of course, the remnants of the king's forces and local militias. The king's men try in vain to maintain order, although some of the offers have dubious motives. So it's a Mordheim, right? This is a big apocalyptic thing that's happened. It's an easy to learn, fast to play, tactical warband skirmish game, loosely based on historical events following the 1692 earthquake that devastated the island of Jamaica. In Port Royal, players take control of small companies of pirates, privateers, Native Americans, African Maroons, or local government forces. They battle for their share of the plunder littering the island and its surrounding coasts. But take heed, the ruins are fraught with danger. Falling buildings, wild animals, desperate civilians, and opposing companies can bring a quick end to members of your company. It can be played in standalone one-off games, but a deeper experience can be found in campaign play. And when playing through a campaign, players can gain loot and experience between games while building infamy and growing in their piratical experience. So come aboard, roll some dice, and have some fun. And then we got some lovely color sections here, which you got a hint at earlier. So I'm going to jump past the game overview and just get right to the materials, because this is it'll be covered in the starter set. But if you're going to if you already have pirate miniatures, you want to grab the rulebook, this is worth talking about. We have at least 4 miniatures per player, 3 10-sided dice per player, one being a different size or color than the rest, because you have a primary die in every skill test. That's the one that can get critical successes and failures. The rest of them are just looking for successes. It's a little bit like the luck die in the Fallout Factions game. Ruler or measuring tape marked in inches, and tokens to mark various game effects like fatigue. In any case, the gameplay is at least 2x2 on the battlefield, which is I think what the mat is in the starter set, with sufficient terrain to represent the ruined state of Port Royal. As with painted models, the game really shines when played on a board with lots of detailed painted terrain. And then you want your rulers. They've got a long-range ruler, which is short, medium, long. I think those are divided into 4-inch chunks, and then it's 2-inch chunks for short, medium for the close-range ruler, and then a long is 4. So it goes to 8 total. And then a movement ruler. So basically a 12-inch stick and an 8-inch stick. GMG makes some nice 8-inch rulers from Death Ray, just so you know. And then some tokens. You want for fatigue. You can usually have up to 2 shaken tokens, concealed tokens, reload tokens, 1 and 2 turns, because some weapons are slower to reload than others. Plunder tokens, which there's some physical bits in the starter set too. Fortune tokens, and stink pot tokens. Now, fortune tokens can be used for a variety of things. They're also a balancing factor for when you've got higher infamy ratings between warbands. They're used for taking additional actions on models, and for other things too that like you want to kind of spend a bit of fate and fortune on to influence the game, and some special abilities as well. It's a D10 based game. Most stats are represented by a number you're trying to roll equal to or higher than. And D5s and D100s are, pretty self-explanatory. Line of sight, again, pretty self-explanatory. Obstructed, non-obstructed, and out of line of sight. Some guidance for random selections, shits in a hat, roll dice and try and roll a 9+ until you find somebody. And then random directions, top of a die on a D10. All right, so we got our stat here. So we got our type. This is the type of character on the roster, and the number in parentheses indicates how many you're able to have. So this quartermaster, for instance, you can have one of in your army. His cost in pieces of 8, or the infamy the character is worth, which is for like some special people, which is important when assembling your company. Your experience is a measure of the character's knowledge and intuition in battle. So lower the experience indicates a more experienced character. So like experience is basically like, are you like a new swabby, or are you like a veteran Marine on a ship? So this quartermaster is pretty experienced with a 5. Fight and then defensive fight. So each of these 2 stats is when you're doing the thing or if you're having the thing done to you. So if this guy is trying to be hit in melee in an opposed test, if he's trying to hit, he's going to roll dice, pool of 3 with 1 primary die, and try and roll as many 6s as possible. When he's defending against said attack, he's going to roll 7s. And those stats can like flip around depending upon how attacky or defendy you are. Shoot, same thing, trying to keep your head down or shoot somebody. Resolve, this is typically used for your morale test. If you have strikes at the end of the game usually ends with one warband that gets too many strikes running away. And you're using the resolve of the highest level officer left on the table when you take strikes. You'll take a strike for every casualty you have, and then a bonus strike if you've like suffered any of the consequences of like objectives and stuff like that, like certain objectives. If your opponent achieves them, they put a strike on your band, and it's kind of a building tension of an amount that you're trying to beat in successes or you're trying to beat in threshold basically to stay on the table. Then you've got your special rules, so anything that you can do, like he's a brawler. That brawler special rule means he's good at fighting in combat. And then weapons and equipment, you don't start with any, but you're going to buy them when you build your company. All right, standard test. So a standard test is a single D10 roll, unless otherwise noted, against whatever your stat is. So a standard test against experience would be 1 die on a 5+. An opposed test, a test primarily performed by both players who roll 3 D10s, 1 primary and 2 additional ones simultaneously, trying to get as many successes as possible against the target number. Modifiers can be applied to the target number to make this easier, like bonuses, or harder. So like if you were going to take a penalty to your fight, you would lose the penalty to the rolls basically to try and hit that 6. So 6s would become 5s and you'd miss in a fight test for this quartermaster. The player with the greater number of successes wins the test. The outcomes will vary depending on the type of the opposed test, and is usually in the states for that test. So like ties might go to the defender or the attacker depending on what you're doing. Critical effects, if the primary dice rolls a 10, it's a success critically, and if it's a 1, it's a critical failure. And there's different effects depending upon the action you're taking. And sportsmanship, don't be cutthroat. And then more great handmade terrain here, which I love the fact that this is all, for the most part, handmade terrain. Look at that. Handmade boat even. Hell yeah. Or chunk of boat, basically sticking up out of the water. All right, let's talk about the game turn. So into the guts of the game now. Active player, casualties, and reactive players are the 3 terms that we're going to need for this chapter. So, and the game turn is broken into the initiative phase, the activation phase, and the end phase. Then the active player, they are taking it in turns, activating each of their models when they're active. This is not an alternating activation game. It's an I go, you go game. But the reactive player very often can spend fortune to react with models that are in line of sight that don't have 2 fatigue tokens to affect the outcomes of things. They'll usually make an experience test, and if they do, they can then react to stuff. So it's more like Infinity in the fact that it is sort of a simultaneous game turn, that you're always doing things, even if it's not your turn when you're reactive, and you're making decisions and pushing your luck as to when the best time to kind of like launch your counterattack is. Each turn starts with the initiative phase. During this phase, fortune points, or simply fortune, are generated. Then both players can spend up to 3 of their fortune and attempt to influence the result of the initiative test. So normally you've got 6 fortune at the start of the game, and you get back to 6 every turn, and you can spend up to 3 of them to try and get yourself the active player test. It's an opposed test, and to see which player becomes active. Use your fortune wisely. Fortune points, I may have many other uses in the game. Clever use of fortune can be the difference between victory and defeat. At the start of this phase, each company gains 6 fortune points. Again, if your infamy is different, like if you have a higher rated warband, you might get to 7 or 8 for every 5 infamy different. And then you can use it for the following things. Additional actions. You can spend an action point to take a third action on somebody. You can never do more than 3 though. As long as they're not exhausted with two fatigues on them. They only get 1 and they could buy a second one. Reroll. A player can spend a fortune to reroll all the dice for a test. Remember that you have to take it even if it's worse. Damage and initiative tests can't be rerolled using fortune. So you can reroll defense maybe, but you can't reroll the damage that you take. And then special things, some factions and characters have fortune points that can be used in different ways. Then determining the active player. To start with, each player may secretly spend a 3 fortune in their pool. Players are not required to do so. When doing so, you hold 1 to 3 counters in a close hand and reveal them at the same time. Spending more points makes it more likely. Both players now roll an initiative test. This has a target number of 7+, and both players roll 3d10s and add the number of fortune points to the total number of successes. The greatest number of successes wins. That player becomes the active player. If there's a tie, the active player with the most that spent the most fortune points will be the first active player. And if it's still a tie, just reroll. Generating events. Additionally, if a tie occurs when determining the first active player, an event is triggered. And to determine the event, go to the event table. So there is some random stuff happening, and I do like that there's actually events. This is kind of a Rangers of Shadow DB kind of thing. When you get like, it's Silver Bayonet that had the random events on tied initiative rolls. And it means that you're going to draw in like some special thing that's like a repercussion of the earthquake, things are going on in the city, random civilians, stuff like that. All right, activating characters and taking their actions. Everybody gets 2 actions. Every character gets their full activation, 1 at a time. You can't interrupt an activation to go to somebody else until the activation's done. There's lots of different actions, and you have to do both your actions in order. You can repeat them if you want, but sometimes actions will have like diminishing returns if you do them more than once. Fortune can be spent to give you additional action, but the character can take no more than 3 actions when they are activated. Conversely, a character with 2 or more fatigue must take 1 fewer action when activated. And then some things are free actions. They don't count towards your action limit. And additionally, a free action does not invoke a penalty if it's repeated during a character's activation. Now, reaction. Every time an active player completes an action, the reactive player may be able to react to it. This is usually done to capitalize on like a tactical error, like running in the open or something like that. And you can attempt a single reaction during their activation. They must make a standard test for an experience test on the character. So like, let's say that quartermaster with an experience of 5. He has to roll a single dice. If he gets that 5+, then he'll be able to react. If he doesn't, the action continues as normal and it's not interrupted. And they can immediately take any one and only one action of the reactive player's choice. It's an out of turn activation. If it's an attack of any kind, the active character must be the target of the attack. And apply all the results of the action immediately. After it's taken, the active player resolves, and a reactive player's character can be used for multiple reactions during the course of the active player's turn without penalty. However, an activated character can trigger a reaction attempt only once per character activation. And then free reactions. If it says you have a free reaction, there's no experience test. You just do it automatically, and any number of models can do it, as opposed to just 1. Once the first active player is finished activating all the characters, and the other player goes, and then once that's done, we go to the end phase. And you get strike points. This is where you might run away. You get a strike point for every casualty you take in. Heavy losses, if you have more than half your guys taken as casualties, you get +1 strike point. And then, like I said earlier, scenario objectives. And you can also just choose to concede. If the game goes 6 turns, though, the person with the least strikes is the winner. And if it's tied, then it's the person with the highest value of guys left. So during each end phase, the players will check to see if their company has decided that the plunder isn't worth their lives and flee. It's called a strike test. There's 2 situations that will force it. When the end phase of 2 or later, if a company has 2 or more strike points and twice as many strike points as the opposing character, or during the end phase of turn 4 or later, if a company has more strike points than the opposing character. To take it, roll a standard test using the resolve of any officer in the company as the target number. They can't be a casualty or be shaken, like getting ready to run away. If there's no officers remaining, then you strike automatically. The definition of an officer can be found on page 5 in creating a company, and if it's failed, the company will just break and flee, and you immediately lose the game. Any loot carried by the fleeing characters is kept, though, and those characters have all survived the engagement. If the strike test is passed, the controlling player may choose to have their company flee voluntarily or continue on with the scenario. So you can lose the scenario, but if you're carrying all the loot, man, just get out of there. All right, let's talk about actions. Fatigue points. Our characters gain these in the course of the battle, which represent wounds, morale, and physical and mental exhaustion. The character's resolve value determines how easily a player can gain fatigue or overcome it. Too much fatigue will decrease a character's efficiency, making them more prone to injury. And it's kind of like carrying wounds. If a standard test that uses the character's resolve value as the test target number. This is the test is passed. There's no effect. If it's failed, the character gains a fatigue point. This chapter explains all the actions available to characters. And remember that actions taken by a character when activated or inactive characters attempting reactions. Actions can also be limited by the effects of fatigue, like you can go down to 1 if you have 2 or more. As mentioned previously, fatigue represents wounds, morale, and physical damage. Aside from its effects on damage tests, fatigues cause a character to deteriorate as follows. So at 1 point, no effect. At 2 points, 1 less action, and you suffer +2 penalty to experience tests. But you can still take free actions as normal. 3 points, the character is shaken. 4 points, no additional. 5 points, no additional. 6 points, you just dead. You die. You bleed out. And remember, the negative effects of fatigue can be reversed if fatigue points are removed by taking rally actions, for example. You can use tokens for fatigue. I would probably actually just use little red D6s as my wound counters for fatigue, just because you can only have up to 6 points before you're dead. And it's just visually easy to instead of stacking fatigue tokens, I'd probably just use those. Shaken, a shaken character is effectively out of the fight until it removes points of fatigue or to 2 or less, typically by taking a rally action. The character may never voluntarily gain fatigue if doing so would cause it to become shaken. So once you're at 2, basically, right, you're only taking a single action, you're going to want to take that rally action. They don't have a threat zone of any size, so you don't have a 1-inch like engagement. May only take rally, move, but can't end within 4 foes, and go prone or stand actions when activated. Can't make reactions, even free ones, +2 penalty to all tests. Immediately drop any scenario-specific loot or plunder tokens they're carrying. 1-inch threat, real simple. You have like a engagement range, and if you're within 1 inch of it, you're engaged. And then attacks. They come in 2 forms. This is a action to attack typically, and there's different types of attack actions. But for shoot attacks, you're trying to shoot someone at a distance. For fight attacks, you're inside your threat zone. So you declare target line of sight. You choose a weapon that they're going to attack with. Determine the base target number. The attacker's shoot or fight skill is the base target number for the opposed test, and the defender's shoot or fight save is his target number, so first and second numbers. And then declare any special rules if you have any special rules like on your skills, like Brawl or on that Quartermaster. Apply modifiers if you're like injured, and then roll dice. At this point, roll 3d10s and then look for all of your bonuses. Skip the next step and proceed to add reload markers if you're shooting. Crit successes in this case add an additional success. If the attacking player rolls more successes than the target, then go right to the roll damage test. And then you subtract the number of targets' successes from the number of the attacker's successes, and this is your threshold for the number of dice rolls that you're going to do for damage. And remove the target as a casualty if you're successful. Or the defender takes a point of fatigue and rolls a fatigue test for each failed damage test if none were successful. So you're going to basically make a fatigue test and see if you are going to accumulate fatigue. So if I hit you, even if I don't hurt you, there's a chance that you make those fatigue tests. And as we saw up at the beginning here, you gain fatigue test. It's a resolve test at your base target number. And then add reload markers, so like your muskets and stuff need to reload. It'll depend on the weapon, how many you get. So damage tests. It's a standard test with an initial target number of 10, applying the following modifiers. So first, the damage value of a weapon. So 10 could go down to 9, 8, 7, 6. Apply the total amount of fatigue the target already has as a bonus. So if they already had 2 fatigue, then -2 to apply the damage test. If the character is subject to multiple damage tests for an attack or other situation like a fall, they may all be rolled simultaneously. If one or more damage tests is successful, the character is immediately removed as a casualty, and otherwise the character will gain a single point of fatigue and will roll a fatigue test to see if it gains any more. The target rolls 1 fatigue test for every failed damage test. See the fatigue test description in the chapter reference. As a reminder, fortune may not be used to reroll a damage test. So, real simple. Let's say I hit you with a damage 4 weapon. Target number is 10, so it's -4, so it's going to make it a 6+. And if I don't get the 6+, take a fatigue and then make a fatigue test to see if you take another one. List of actions. You can move, you can shoot attack, fight attack, conceal, go prone, reload, rally, charge, or interact with stuff for objectives. Real simple. Move is 4 inches. If a move is taken more than once, each additional move is 1 inch less. So 3 moves, right, if you try to do it, would be a total of 9 inches of movement. And freely hop over terrain that's 1 inches. Usual kind of rolls. And a moving character may not move through any other characters, friend or foe. Any character that is shaken, however, can be repositioned up to 1 inch by the active player to make room for the moving character. This repositioning move may not move the shaken character off the table. That would cause to gain fatigue or take a damage test. Similar rules for climbing and jumping, falling. We're going to talk about attacks. So different like range modifiers. If you're in medium range, it's +1 penalty. Long range is a +2 penalty. And then cover will add a +2 to your shoot. So let's say you had a shoot value of 6 and they were basically in cover, then you needed 8 to hit. Fight attack modifiers. If the fight attack is taking place across terrain feature, it's +1 to the fight test, so that 6 would become a 7. Additionally, if the attacking character has other characters in the company nearby, you get a -1 for every assistance to a maximum bonus of -3. So you gang up on somebody, it gets easier to hit them. You can hide. If a character takes the conceal action or reaction, or at the last action of its activation, the character will remain concealed until its next activation. It immediately loses concealed if its foe becomes within 4 inches of it, so you basically like come to find it. It attacks or interacts. You can also go prone and stand, reload your gun, rally, which removes fatigue. The character makes a resolve test. If it's successful, it removes a fatigue point. Any rally actions an active character attempts after the first incur a +1 penalty to resolve, though. But if a 10 is rolled, so if you critically succeed your fatigue test, you get an additional point of fatigue removed. Charge action combines a move with a free fight action. Interact to catch all for objectives. So nice simple core rules. Nice simple action list, and it's all boiling down to that three dice test system. We got our game boards, so just some guidance on like laying out terrain. Obviously, the more the better. It's because it's kind of a Mordheim-Style game with like big chunks of like destroyed city and ship on the coast and stuff. And now we're to the good stuff, creating a company. Okay, so like I said, Sword set comes with 13 models. 2 captain models, that friar model, and then a box of 10 pirates. So you got your infamy. It's a measure of your like power levels, like your experience and infamy and stuff. And then your piece of 8 is the current cost. It's a currency in Port Royale. And your roster sheets, which you can print off. Use this section to build your company. The rules apply to single games as well as campaign games. The company always has to have 1 or more officers, one of which will be the commander. So you can have like sub-officers and stuff too. A bit like Necromunda, right? You've got your gang leader and then you got your champions. A company will also include a number of rank and file crew members. A new company is built to using a set number of pieces of 8, or pieces for short. Pieces are used to purchase characters and equipment up to your company. After building a company, you'll determine if the infamy value based on how it was set up and equipped. All this information will be recorded in the campaign's roster sheet. All right, so first your officer, a character that represents a commander or another important figure. They may begin with experience points because they might have a higher level of experience. Officers gain experience and injuries individually that attract more detail. Generally, they also gain advancements more quickly than crew because they're like the heroes in the story. Your company may include 8 groups of crew. Each type of crew contains up to 5 characters of the same type, but they can be armed differently. So again, like henchmen in Mordheim. And then groups gain experience as a whole as opposed to individually, again, like Mordheim. So it's going to be familiar to players who've played like sort of classic GW warband building games. All right, first choose a faction, and then you get 30 pieces to spend on characters, equipment, and starting experience. So not that many pieces. Again, this is going to be a small-ish game. A company can include more than 10 characters. It must always include at least 1 officer and any number of crew members. May never have more than 5 of any individual character type, and may not have more officers' characters than crew characters. Characters with a number of parentheses next to them, you can only have a maximum of that 1. And once you select all your characters, fill out your company roster with them. And then you equip them. A company may only be equipped with a total of 3 rare items, can gain more. A character can only carry a single weapon or piece of equipment with a 2-handed rule. And can have up to 3 other pieces of equipment of any type. Once all weapons and equipment have been purchased, they must be assigned to characters, and add the weapons to your company's roster sheet so each character has 1. And then add starting experience points. During this step, some people might have starting XP. Each piece spent on a character grants it 2 bonus XP. A character may not be given more than 6 starting XP. This experience will trigger an advancement. Roll for it now. So you can actually kind of tweak your characters a little bit by adding experience to them. And then calculate your infamy. To get this character, simply add the total value of pieces of all characters and equipment, including any that were free, which are worth 1 each, and add an additional +1 for every advancement each officer has, and +1 for each individual character in a crew group for each advancement achieved by the group. So basically, if you have 5 characters, it's 5 more. Now, that means that you're going to have a total value plus basically your advances. And again, this is going to be familiar for people who played Mordheim. Like you had your rating and it was based on, I think it was experience times 5 plus your value. No, your value divided by 10 plus your experience is what it was based on. There's always some kind of math formula for this, but basically what's going to add into is more fortune for people when your infamy gets higher. And we got our actual rosters here. So you can see there's the example one. Jamaican pirates, you have a captain. It's going to cost you 6. A bosun's going to cost you 3. You can have up to 2 of them. A quartermaster's 4, and a cabin boys are 2. So you got your young bloods, quartermasters, bosuns, and captains. So if you're starting with 30, if you had one of each of these, that's going to be 15 already. Half of it's just going into those heroes. But you can't have, I think it is more, so you'd have to have at least 4 crew as well. So then you have to buy, let's say, some sea dogs. So 4 sea dogs and 4 of those guys. We're looking at 27 already. You've only got 3 pieces of 8 to now buy equipment. And that equipment's going to be, so like if you've got equipment, muskets, blunderbusses, pistols, swords, axes, lances, daggers, climbing gear, medicine, rapiers, bonus, plug bayonets, grenados, and stink pots are your rare equipment. So you have 3 of those and any number of the common equipment pieces. But you want to give people something. It's probably going to start with like roughly 6 models. You'd probably start with like a captain, a bosun, maybe a cabin boy. That's going to give you 11 points, and then maybe 3 sea dogs or 3 freebooters at 9. So now we're at 20. We got 10. You can give at least 1 piece of equipment to everybody that way. And so we're into like the French Buccaneers. They've got a faction who are like well armed. When creating a new company, every officer in this company may add a single weapon at no cost. So it's going to add to your infamy, but it's not going to add any cost. And then Buccaneer tricks once per game. When you become the active player, you may spend 2 fortune points of every character in this company and immediately take a free reload action. And they've got filibusters, sailors, boucaniers, and engagés, which means enlisted men. And they can have like basically the same equipment: Spanish guardas, Caribbean raiders, Maroons, and these ones are Force of the Crowns, the English. Look at them in their fancy red coats. And you can see in the picture here, it's mostly 6-man teams to start off with. So that's roughly what you're going to have. Captain, and NCO, and a midshipman, right? So again, you're looking at 9, 10 to start, and you got 20 to spend on everything else. Able seamen, soldiers. And you can see here the stat line. So for instance, the soldier's a little bit better than the able seaman when it comes to shooting. Expertly drilled. The Dutch in their fancy blue and yellow. And then we've got all of our equipment and stuff here. So special rules, weapons, and equipment, because all the gear's got, bonus rules and stuff, and especially the rare stuff. Special rules, things like your aggressive commander, brawler, that quartermaster when making fight attacks, you're critting on a 9 or 10. And there's piles of these to make everybody kind of special. Weapon stuff. So we look at a weapon stat line. You get your damage bonus, your ranges, and then if it reloads, some weapons generate 1 or more reload tokens, and you have to take an action to get each one off. Traits, special traits they might have. So things like accurate, it's -1 to attack test when using this weapon. Black powder, if this weapon rolls a critical failure on a shoot attack, you gain an additional reload marker because you fouled the gun somehow. Cumbersome, +2 tests of fighting in dense areas of terrain with this weapon. It's like you're swinging a giant hammer in the jungle. And we can see some examples here. So like an axe, its damage rating is -2, so 10 -2 would become an 8 to do a damage test, and its range is 0 because it's got to be in melee. Lances and half pikes actually have a 1-inch range, +1 inch, so you could go 2-inch ranges, and it's impaling and 2-handed. So like 2-handed, character must be equipped with only a single 2-handed weapon, and impaling, when making the free fight action after a charge action, apply a -1 bonus to any damage tests, because you're running with like all full steam behind you. Inarmed, inaccurate, weakened bonus weapon. Pike, right? So plug bayonets, swords, rapiers, bonus experience for using climbing gear when you climb. So -2 all your experience tests when you climb. So like that the quartermaster is experience 5. You'd be experience 3 when making climbing tests. And our scenarios. All right, so these are either one-off game or they're also used in the campaign game, and it's pretty standard, right? You might have variations. Roll a d10 if you want to have a variation, or draw a card if you use the card deck. And you can have random things on the table, like angry citizens might show up. Sweltering heat. If a character moves more than 4 during activation, roll a resolve test. If it's failed, take a fatigue point because it's so damn hot. Low vis. Chaos and calm. Roll twice more on this table to apply both results. And then we've got some cool deployment styles. So random deployment styles, divided party, distant approach, clash. Give you all the map styles. And then campaigns. And it's the usual campaign stuff. There's solo and cooperative game sections as well, which we'll jump into just for a quick look. But it's pretty much the standard procedure. Check for your injuries. Crew and your characters have different injuries. So your officers obviously have a big experience or big injury table. The crew, it's just you're dead or you're alive. So 1 to 3 you're dead, 4 to 10 you're full recovered. And then all these weirdo injuries like a spinal injury or an infection. Gain XP. XP will then turn into additional advances. If you get 5 points, so an officer or crew group that participates in a game with an opposing company with an infantry rating that was 5 points higher gets an additional XP too. So there's an offset basically for people being better than you when you're doing XP. And then gain some income. So when you play the game, you might find equipment, you might get income. It's all pretty standard. This is a magic game, right? So it's going to be more stuff that you can probably come with. And then there's an exploration table. After each game, all companies that participated in the game may continue to search through the ruins. Officers that is eligible to participate in the next game may choose to roll in the exploration table. If they do, take whatever the result that is rolled. Any pieces gained are not affected by the limits in the gain income step above. So it's added to your stash, not added as income. So all kinds of cool things might happen. You might find a wealthy home that you can loot for 2d10 plus 5 pieces of 8. Meet a surgeon that can help you out by joining your warband as an officer. Plunder, just more pieces of 8. A physician's chest for some medicine. Buried freebooter. Add an old freebooter character to your company. This character is an officer with the following stats. He's armed with a dagger, but you can give him additional equipment. While he's part of your company, you may assign 1 additional character an extra point of XP each game from his advice. So he's a Long John Silver. Divide your shares. There might be mutiny. Many things aren't going well. Characters in your company may defect or even mutiny. This is some Gorka Morka shit right here. If called to check for a mutiny, roll a d10 and add a total amount by which you're short to pay your company to the roll. If the result is 10 or more, remove a random crew member from your roster from your roll equal to the amount by which the roll exceeded 10. So if the result is 14 plus, the company mutinies. No crew characters are lost. Instead, remove your company's commander and its equipment from the roster and replace it as if it was moved as a casualty. So your commander gets off by his men. So you have to pay 1 piece for every individual crew and 2 pieces for every officer. So you have to make at least that much money every game. So think about that first 6-man warband. If you had 3 crew and 3 officers, you're having to get yourself 9 pieces of 8 every game to pay them. Then you recruit new guys. People can advance. When a character has enough XP, 3 for officers and 5 for crew groups, roll in the advancement table. Your character's only human, and as such are limited by how good they can get. The following limitations to character profile as always: experience can never be less than 3, skills can never be less than 4, save can never be less than 5, and resolve can never be less than 3. If the result of the roll in the advancement table would cause a character stat to improve beyond the above limitations, roll another die. On a 6+, apply the next highest result. On a 1 to 5, it's a next lowest, and repeat the process until you gain a qualifying advancement. It's always get advanced, but sometimes it's not what you want. And this is the random table for what you get. So again, this is a random advancement game. Some people like that. Some people don't like that. I personally think that there's always a happy medium, which was spend. So if you get 3 experience, so let's say you have 5 experience, you're only going to level once. You can spend experience to modify the dice rolls up and down. But then it's gone. Yeah, you have to wait to get more to level up again. And then it's the standard like crew management. So you trade, equip, and then adjust your information for your game. And then we got multiplayer, solo, and co-op rules. So big team games, GM games, then solo games. Solo games is the most straightforward game in this section. Simply create an opposing force to play against and follow the rules for the non-player opposing force section, and use your company to play a game against that force. And you can link several things using the AI. So basically what it's saying is use the solo and co-op setup and the op 4 rules. So it's going to give you basically like a deck of cards set of rules and different action and move types for every model. So you might have a priority action. So push, hold, or fall back, whatever the priority is going to be. And whenever an attack by a character belonging to a player has 1 or more uncancelled successes, the player must choose whether or not to reroll their attack using fortune, because you've got your opponent's fortune pool. And then if a spade is drawn, the op 4 character will re-roll all of its dice that failed to roll successes. So then whatever dice you've pulled, when a club spade, instead some of the cards will give the op 4 character a bonus. When a club or spade is drawn for a character, it grants the following benefits, because you're using a deck of cards to basically determine their activations. And the action priority will be like A, B, or C. It's either push, hold, or fall back. And they'll do different abilities. So like if it's push and the action priority is 1, it's based on your strike total. They might shoot, medium range, or closer. 2 might make an aggressive move. 3 is just shoot. 4 is reload. 5 aggressive move. 6 rally. and then 7's a tactical move. But it's going to give you how to do each of these things in here. So a nice simple AI system, and you're drawing cards for the character's actions to see what they do. So it does put some unknown in it, and I like that for a solo AI system, because the problem with a direct AI system of always X then Y is you can kind of gamify it. A little bit of RNG and chaos, like using a deck of cards, I think it's really healthy for a solo set of rules, because you don't want to be able to predict always what they're going to do. And when they do something out of character, it's more like having a real opponent. And then the appendix, some standalone games using Blood and Plunder units, big events table. So this is what happens when you tie initiative. Because there's rain, panic sets in, wild beasts show up, good omens and bad omens happen. And we got a glossary, our character sheets, one for each. I really like this. They did one for each of the factions. So if you print your character sheets out of here, you actually have your faction rules and everything already printed in, which is really nice. And then quick ref, and some ads, and we're done. Printable tokens and terrain too in the PDF. So if you did want to just print them off and make them yourself, a very handy way of doing this is you can use like a spray adhesive, mount them on card. I've done that before. You can also, or mount them on even on MDF. And then cut them out. I've also done hole punches for the circular ones, and then used bottle cap stickers. You can buy big pads of them on like Amazon or Etsy or whatever, and they're just like clear plastic stickers that kind of dome over and make your stuff a little more robust. You could also just buy MDF discs and glue them to that as well. And that's it. Port Royale, a pirate skirmish game by Firelock Games. So we've done another one, folks. That is our look at the sort of like latest offering from Firelock. And thanks to the GMG patrons for picking it, and for you guys for watching. So if you want more of this, obviously we're going to hang out now afterwards, me and the patrons, talk about the game a little bit, talk about any future plans we have for it. Very often the games that get picked for Tuesdays, which is our indie game, they start off here on the indie hour. So, and I've got everything to play Port Royale. So if Tyler or Bob or anybody who wants to come in, maybe Christian wants to come in and play some Pirates of the Caribbean, obviously we have everything that we need to be good to go to do so. And, yeah, you may see this one on the table in the near future. We've got the 1490 Doom campaign and Flames of Orion going until like October though, and they're already filmed, they're done. So you got lots of stuff showing up on Tuesdays, but that gives us lots of time, of course, to print or paint and prep stuff for doing a pirate game too. And in the cold winter months, that might be a good idea. So you might see this one soon in the future. If you're a GMG patron, obviously hang out for a bit, because we'll be back to hang out and talk about the game, the design, answer any questions you guys might have. So we'll see you next week for the next episode of the GMG Indie Hour. Now, if you're watching it live on YouTube, we're probably recording the next one as you speak. And you can sign up for the Patreon and join in that process, nominate games, and of course get to vote on what's getting covered next. But until then, we'll see ya. Have a great one.